Welcome to this new video in the series of videos around airline economics. In this video, I'm going to talk with you about business planning and the business plan cycle. What is business planning about? Well, business planning is all about the process of designing a profit-maximizing product or service that takes into account the market demands and the customer preferences, and is subject to the resource limitations and any external constraints which might be existing in the environment in which you are operating. As you see is that we are looking for a profit-maximizing product. What does it mean? It means that we're trying to cover the cost with a decent amount of revenues, resulting in, let's say, a profitability. It also means that on a unit basis, we're looking to cover, let's say, the unit cost with unit revenues or ticket prices which are high enough to cover the cost accordingly per passenger. Now, we always take into account in a business plan the customer preferences and the amount of demand. And customer demand is defined by two parts. First of all, how much demand is there? Basically, you try to calculate or evaluate the amount of passengers or cargo or mail which needs to be transported from A to B. And two, what is the intrinsic requirement of your customer? What is intrinsic requirement by means of characteristics? How should the product look like in order to fulfill the customer needs or requirements? In each environment, we have to deal with constraints, and those constraints can be internally, either externally driven. Internal constraints could be, for instance, resource limitations. Resource limitations could be, for instance, aircraft usability limitations. We have to remember that our aircraft has to be maintained once in a while, after an amount of flight hours or after a specific time, which means that our aircraft will be grounded accordingly. We have to take care of that in our business plan. Equally, we have to deal with external constraints. These are constraints which we cannot influence ourselves, which we cannot control ourselves. Think about the weather. Weather is one of the major important external constraints in the aviation industry. It limits our way how we operate, when we operate, and therefore constrains our business considerably. Now, the business plan in itself is static, but the aviation industry or the demand or the environment in which we operate is dynamic, driven by competition, driven by changes in demand. So therefore means that we have to look at a business plan cycle, which makes the business plan dynamic. Now, how does the business plan cycle works? Well, we always start with evaluating the market. Once we have evaluated the market, we can build up a strategy which answers to, let's say, the market as such. The strategy will then deliver a possibility to make tactics. The tactics will be made operational, and then we can close the loop or close the cycle again by measuring the performance of our tactics and reevaluate whether we indeed did a good job or not. Once we have reevaluated that, we can start the cycle again and evaluate whether our strategy and tactics were good. Does it mean that we readdress our strategy, rebuild our strategy? No, we will not do that. But we will merely evaluate whether we are in line with our objectives or our goals which we have set out in our strategy. What is then the difference between a strategy and a tactic? Well, the difference between a strategy and a tactic is merely has to do with the fact that a strategy is driven by, let's say, the characteristics of an environment. So the environment characteristics drive a choice for a specific strategy. For instance, you could, for instance, define your strategy based on the fact that you see that there is a growth in a specific market, which means you might define to open up new routes to that region. A tactic is different because a tactic will be an action which an airline defines based on changes in that environment, changes in that market. For instance, your competitor is increasing the frequency on a specific route. The question arises how you will act on that route. How will you increase your frequency, or will you not increase your frequency and undertake other actions to be competitive? What you'll see is that therefore the difference between a strategy and a tactic characterizes the two aspects in such a way that strategies are mostly more longer term and tactics are much more shorter term driven. Inherently, the goal for an airline will be to go as much as possible through the cycle, therefore being agile to a changing demand and being agile to changes in the environment. Together, we just about discussed how to set up a business plan and how we have to undertake the business plan from a cycle perspective.